What's going on, Awesemo baseball fans? How are you? We're here for Live Before Lock baseball edition, squeezing it in between some basketball shows, some hockey shows, everything else going on. Heard a rumor that we've got like 100 shows a week now. I don't think you got any cable channels, any streaming services out there you're paying for, giving you 100 things a week to watch. So hope you guys are enjoying it. Hope you guys are liking it. Hope you guys are subscribing to our channels. We're here to talk baseball. I'm here with Max Smatrisky. Max,
yeah, good call.
Did I get it?
Yeah.
Rock and roll. All right. I know I put our little run sheet in the channel with just spelled out, but I actually put some dashes in there to try and give myself a chance at it phonetically. And of course, you guys recognize the other guy with me here, the boss himself, Alex Awesemo Baker, joining us today. Alex, what's going on?
What's up, man? It's been a pretty fun week. First MLB week. So excited to be talking some baseball again.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I think you can probably tell from my enthusiasm from the fact that I've been on just all the baseball shows the first week, trying to work myself in as much as possible. It's my favorite sport. Love talking about it. So, guys, start things off. Just quick little plug for some of the things. No sponsor today, but we're brought to you by Awesemo.com. We're brought to you by Odds Shopper. If you're enjoying all our shows, hit the like, hit the subscribe. You get all the notifications when our shows come on live. But more than that, for shows that aren't live before lock, any of our strategy shows from the morning, things like that, if you're at work, if you're not able to catch them live, they all go up on your favorite podcast network. So you can catch up to us every sport we do, everything that we're covering. Go on your favorite podcast service, download it, give us a listen. More than that, give us a 5-star review. Get in there. I think you're going to like them anyway, but give us 5 stars and leave your email address or some way, or your Twitter handle. We're going to do a contest every Friday. We're giving 5-star reviews up to up to a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We're picking a winner every Friday, eligible up to a year after you put your review up. 5-star reviews only. So give us a good review. I think the content's well worth it. Like and subscribe. And speaking of content, Top Pitchers tool is free today across the site. So a ton of great stuff in there. That's one of my favorite tools on the site. I put that thing right next to the Top Stacks tool, and you've pretty much got the slate laid out for you. Last piece of the puzzle here, guys. Think you probably heard it already if you're tuning in for this show, but MLB, we've got a pretty good deal going on. Your first 9 days of Awesemo Plus MLB, $9 when you use the promo code starting9 with the number 9. So I'm not going to read the full thing here. It's our top stacks. It's our lineup builder. It's all the great stuff you hear us talking about for $9 for your first 9 days. Stop guessing. Start winning. Awesemo Plus. Guys, let's get into it. We've got an 8-gamer to cover. A little bit of about 50 minutes to do it in. Kicking things off, first game of the night, NL East matchup. We got the New York Mets with a 4.83 implied run total at the Philadelphia Phillies. Mets are favored, Phillies with a 4.27, and we've got a 9.0 game total in this one. Just pulling up the matchup here as we go. And, excuse me, bear with me. I have a second there. So we've got Stroman going for the Mets against Chase Anderson on the Phillies side. A couple of righties going up against one another. Let's start things off with Max. Max, what do you like from this one? You like either pitcher? Are we talking about bats in this one? Where are we?
Yeah, I don't think the pitchers really fit well on the slate just because we have some really high-powered guys and Giolito and Glasnow going later on. Stroman is kind of interesting, I guess, just because he's a guy that will keep the ball in the ballpark, will give you a bunch of innings. He didn't pitch in 2020. I think he opted out due to the COVID thing. But yeah, he's kind of like a low K percentage guy, nothing flashy, gets a bunch of ground balls, doesn't give up a lot of power. So I think he's fine. Anderson was really unlucky last year. He had a 30% home run rate, which inflated his numbers, but he actually didn't pitch too badly. But I feel like Mets stacks are going to be popular here. I am not super interested.
Alex, you seeing anything different on either pitcher or either one of them popping for you?
So I think Chase Anderson, 24% K rate. I have him at just a little bit above the league average. Matchup versus Mets. They got a pretty tough lineup though this year. They have about 20% more extra bases in it than your average team. So Chase Anderson is not a elite pitcher to begin with, but I guess you could take a shot for 6,200. Like the points per dollar looks pretty good there. Stroman, a little bit of a wild card coming off a year where he didn't pitch, but I think he has never really been an elite fantasy pitcher. I was actually surprised to see him as the Mets #2 starter because in past years they've had like pretty solid rotations. This year it looks like they may have taken a step back. So I think Stroman is someone I'm going to avoid tonight.
Yeah, it's to that point, just as a guy who's, maybe a better real life pitcher, guy who works his way through the game, but doesn't necessarily put up a ton of strikeouts. And especially for 8,600 on DK, 8,000 on FanDuel, I just think he's inappropriately priced for this slate as well. On the other side, are you considering Anderson more as like an SP2 DraftKings kind of a play? Would you have any of them on FanDuel?
Definitely DraftKings only. Yeah, it's just like you got to find some cheap pitchers to be able to get some of the sacks you want. And if Chase Anderson was the guy that fit, I'd be happy to click that button.
Yeah. Makes sense. And then on the lineup side of things, in terms of stacking either one of these teams, I know the Mets aren't exploding to the top of the stacks board on either side, Alex, but they are in the top, top 6 here. So are you getting decent power marks? What is it about the Mets that are maybe keeping them afloat a little bit in the top stacks tool? For me, I'm getting them pretty aggressively in my home run model, particularly the obvious names with Lindor, Conforto, and Alonso in there. What do you like from the Mets bats?
The temperature in Philadelphia is a little bit high for this time of year right now. So they're at 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually when I'm thinking April baseball, I'm thinking kind of cooler temperatures. So that's definitely going to be a factor tonight. The other thing is just the talent level where almost all of their batters have above average or average power. So that does really provide a lot of opportunities for run production. So I think this and the fact that they're away team, this is looking like a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I like getting to the away teams when we can. We get that guaranteed 9th inning out of that, and a couple guys with pretty good hit tool in the Mets lineup here too. Between Conforto, Dom Smith, Jeff McNeil, you've got some guys with a good hit tool, good ability to get on base in front of some of those thumpers, and guys who have their own power as well, so they can drive in runs. Not a ton of speed in the Mets lineup. You get Lindor in there, has certainly the ability to swipe a few bags, and he's an obvious superstar name. Max, know you're a Yankees fan, or I'm guessing you're a Yankees fan by the hat. So I'm glad we're racking up a couple of extra Yankees fans on the channels here. But I didn't want to drag you into the Mets conversation because of that. But what are you thinking on the Philly side? Another city that I don't know is a Northeast New York guy. What you think of Philadelphia? But what do you think of the Phillies lineup today?
Yeah, I mean the Phillies have some power in their lineup, but with Stroman being a ground ball guy, I guess the only guys I would be interested in are like the guys with the uppercut swings that lift those sinkers up in the air, like Harper and Didi. Other than that, I don't really see anybody on the Phillies out.
All right, I like that. One guy that did jump a little bit for me, hitting second, Alec Bohm. I like him little 2,700 on FanDuel, a little bit of a discount there, 3,100 on DK. You get him with multi-position on FanDuel as well in that new multi-position, and just nobody going to him, hitting second. Kid's got a little bit of pop, high pedigree prospect coming up, so get a decent home run mark on him. So I would throw him into that mix in the middle of the lineup there with Harper, Realmuto, and Didi. I think that is top to bottom on that game. So moving on, guys, hit the like and subscribe down there. Tampa Bay, 4.98 implied total, taking on the Boston Red Sox in Beantown. Red Sox with a 4.12. Game's got a 9.0 implied total from Vegas, or I'm sorry, a 9.0 game total from Vegas. Tyler Glasnow for the Rays, big righty going up against the Sox, taking on Martin Perez. Southpaw, pretty weak on the Red Sox side of things. Either pitcher jumping into lineups for you, Alex?
So Glasnow is definitely someone I'm always interested in because last year he had a 38% K rate over 51 innings. Didn't disappoint on opening day. He had a really solid performance then. And he, in the past, has struggled with getting deep in games, but in the past season, he kind of cured that a little bit. Then, I mean, the negatives are really like the park in Fenway. That's definitely a batter's park. And then the Red Sox lineup definitely is taking a step forward this year, where last year I feel like they're kind of rebuilding a little bit. This year, above average and getting on base and power. So that is a negative. They do strike out less than average as well. So matchup's not good, but I feel like Glasnow has enough talent that he's a good option on any slate he's on.
Yeah, some sneaky quality in that Red Sox lineup. We had JD Martinez was suffering in a down year last year. There's the whole narrative about him being able to watch his in-game at bats, and he's obviously stepped up in the first few games this season, and the power is back. So maybe that is maybe there's something to that. But more to your point, building in an Alex Verdugo for a full season, Hunter Renfroe in that lineup now, just a few more pieces to build in around the core of Martinez, Bogarts, and Devers. I get very nice home run marks on Devers, on Renfroe, as well as JD Martinez, and really think we can, maybe they're a little bit sneaky going up against Glasnow. I'm sure they don't rate out very well in terms of the top stacks tool, but it is a lineup that we know has some power, and we know they're going to be going up against what should be at least a relatively popular pitcher. So any thoughts, Max, in terms of maybe going to a sneaky Red Sox stack against Glasnow, or do you just kind of cross them off going up against such a good pitcher?
Yeah, not for me. I mean, I'm not a guy that makes 150 lineups. So for me, like in 3 max and stuff, it's just not going to be something that I would go to. I do think Glasnow provides pretty good leverage on Giolito, just because we have him as half owned as Giolito is going to be. And I think they have very similar upside. Glasnow looked great. I think only threw 77 pitches in his first start, but at a 15% K swinging strike rate. So that's pretty much in line with his numbers. The velocity was actually even up from last year, and that's saying something for him. So yeah, I love Glasnow here, even in Fenway, which is a notorious hitter's park.
Right on. And then anything on the Rays side of things? I imagine neither of you guys are rostering Martin Perez, even as a dumpster fire of SP2 on DraftKings. Do I have that right, Alex? Or across 150 lineups, would you have any Martin Perez?
Well, I never like ruling out a guy, but in this case, it does seem to make sense. He only struck out 18% of batters last year, and Tampa Bay has got a pretty solid lineup. They do strike out a little bit more than average, but Perez definitely doesn't seem like the guy that's going to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, he's a guy I've liked to attack over the last couple of years with bats, and every now and then he'll burn you doing that, but I don't think this is the spot. And you mentioned 17.6% strikeout rate last year, 18.3 the year before. On top of that, 10.7% walk rate last year, 9.1% the year before, 4.66 xFIP in 2019, 5.20 xFIP last year. Just an ugly starter there. And the Rays play the platoon game pretty well. So there's no Austin Meadows in the lineup. They're going with platoon specialist Mike Brasso tonight. Manny Margot drops down to the 4 spot. We do get Brandon Lowy in there, who handles lefty pitching pretty well as a fellow lefty. So he's going to be batting 5th. And then you get Diaz up top in this configuration with Rosarena hitting behind him. So I think there's something to like in that top half of the Rays stack. I don't know if it translates all the way down. Like I would probably stop around 6 with Willy Adames, getting him in at the shortstop. Maybe you play one of the 2 heavy thumper but heavy strikeout catchers in Francisco Mejia or Mike Zunino all the way at the bottom of the lineup. I don't like dipping all the way to the bottom for a guy like Zunino, though, who's more swing and miss or home run. If I'm going to a wraparound stack, I like getting to a speed and on-base guy there. Is there anything from the Tampa Bay lineup that you're looking at, Max, in terms of stacking up some of these bats?
Yeah, I love the Tampa stack. They project as our third, I think, our third top stack, but they're only going to be owned around 5% because we have Coors on the slate. So that gives you pretty good leverage. I think that's probably my favorite stack as far as ownership goes of the day. And yeah, I would go low, Brasso, Rosarena, Diaz, and I would go Adames over Margot just because he's got a much better ISO than Margot does.
I like it, and he plays that valuable shortstop spot too. We can find
sure.
fielders elsewhere. That's a nice little sneaky shortstop to build in. Alex, anything from you on the Tampa Bay side of things stick out before we move on to the next game?
Definitely the ownership, as Max was saying, with Coors taking a lot of the ownership. They're only at 5% on DraftKings. And especially if you go to the right guys like Brandon Lowy, he has the lefty matchup, so that is going to be something that dings him in projections, but it's going to drive down the ownership a ton. So we have him at around 1% ownership. He's probably the worst play on the team, aside from the maybe Zunino. I mean, he's a power guy, but batting 9th and 4,100, that's a little tough. but lowy. Lefty does hurt power a good amount, about like 20%, if I recall correctly. But that's one way you can mix up your stack even more.
Yeah, the one thing that concerns me with him specifically in a lefty-lefty matchup, his peripheral number, his average, and his on base and his slugging percentage all hold up fairly well. But his strikeout rate jumps to 38.4%, which even against a weak lefty like this is a little bit of a concern. But I wouldn't leave him out necessarily because of that. And to your point, it is a reason that other people might start skipping over him. Only 3K on FanDuel. I think you could maybe squeeze some sneaky value there. But we've got to move on. Otherwise, we're going to go over the time limit. So game 3, Milwaukee Brewers, 4.72 implied total at the Chicago Cubbies with a 4.87 implied total, 9.5 runs on the board from Vegas. Let me get over to this one here. I should start learning to click this before I actually introduce the game. So we've got Freddie Peralta taking on Albert Alzolay. What do we like in this one, guys? Are you getting to either pitcher, Max?
Yeah, I kind of like Freddie just to pay down. He's a strikeout guy. He struck out like 38% of batters last year. He also walks a ton of guys, but I looked at his spring training numbers and walks were actually down. He only walked 3 guys in about 13 innings. So that's the kind of guy that I like to sprinkle into my GPP lineups just because he has the upside to win your GPP.
I like it. And then, just checking against our free today top pitchers tool. You guys can jump on the site and check that out. Looks like Freddie ranks out pretty well in terms of probability of being the top 2. He's in that top handful of guys with some, pretty strong names actually up there with him, and not getting a ridiculous amount of ownership for being in that spot, certainly. So I think he's definitely in play there. Getting to any Alzolay, Alex, as a potential SP2 option or a dirt cheap SP1 on FanDuel going up against this Brewers lineup with a pretty good amount of strikeouts in it?
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling some Alzolay as a contrarian play today. So Alzolay, he made his MLB debut in 2019. He hasn't really pitched much in the MLB, but over 147 batters, he struck out 29%, which is about 25% more than your average pitcher. So that really indicates the kind of upside we could see out of Alzolay. He is a little bit of a wild card because he hasn't averaged very many innings per game. So we know we're getting into a little bit of a dice roll with him, whether he's going to make it past the 5 innings to get a win. But there's definitely a lot of upside because, as you mentioned, the Brewers do strike out a lot.
Yeah, heavy bunch of guys in terms of full season projections projected for mid-20s and upward strikeout rate on that Brewers lineup. A couple decent guys in preventing it. Colton Wong off the top projected for around 15% strikeout rate. So he's good, but everybody else in that lineup is gettable. So yeah, I think there's something to like there, particularly 6,200s. You're chasing that win. Probably not going to get the quality start 6 innings out of them, but if you can get to that win and get some of those strikeouts, I think he's in play, particularly at that value price. So he's somewhat interesting there for me. And the strikeout rate, it's not all the way up in the 30s in his minor league career, but he was like a mid-20s strikeout rate guy through his minor league stops over the years. So he's got the pedigree. I definitely think it's in play. And I think this is a good lineup to potentially do it against. There are a fair amount of lefty bats in there, which is a little concerning. Is there anything that appeals to you, Alex, in terms of getting to the Brewers stack on the other side of that, maybe balance out your Alzolay play?
Yeah, they're super, super cheap on DraftKings. So it's looking like they may be one of the most popular stacks of the night, the Brewers. So let me start by ownership. Looks like about the 5th most popular stack today. So the ownership is spread out pretty well, but I'm seeing that the leverage is pretty heavily in the negatives. So that doesn't mean I'm going to avoid them necessarily, but I'm not going to be looking at Daniel Vogelbach batting second for 2,800 and being like, this is going to be the key to the slate, even though like that is just an absurd price.
For sure. Yeah. And that's it's an important metric to look at, that leverage score, when we talk about these top stacks and how much they're going to be owned compared to their probability of being the top stack on the board or the top 2 on or excuse me, top two in the pitchers tool. So in terms of judging that for baseball, and just to take it in a strategy direction real quick, and can you talk real quick about judging the leverage in terms of where you do it for baseball compared to where you would do it for basketball, where negative leverage isn't necessarily a killer for a guy who's just ridiculously good chalk at a ridiculous value? How do you view that leverage through that same prism for baseball? Do you consider negative leverage to be a quick warning sign, or is it something you're willing to swallow a little bit of negative leverage on?
So I think it's all like kind of in the framework of your overall roster construction, where if you have some guys that are a little bit high owned, then you want to balance them out with some low owned guys. So what I'm just seeing in this Brewers lineup is that a few of the guys, the lineup just came out, so I have to rerun the ownership, but I feel like Vogelbach and Wong batting 1-2 at 3,300 and 2,800 are going to be two of the most popular plays on the slate. And they are cash smash plays, I'd say. On FanDuel, Wong is quite a bit more, but Vogelbach is only 2K, so that's about the same situation. So that one's tough. I think I might use them as one-offs just because it's hard to find a guy that's 2,800 on DraftKings and 2K on FanDuel that's batting second and is a power batter. So, I mean, checks all the boxes, but the ownership's got to be high.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's where we get that slight concern of, we start creeping up in ownership in an event-based sport, then we're really clipping our opportunity for extreme upside over the field. But yeah, I think it makes sense to given the values that are baked into those plays today. Moving on to the Cubs side of things real quick before we jump games. Max, getting to any Cubbies bats against Freddie? I know you like Freddie as a pitcher coming in. You getting to any of the other side?
Yeah, I mean, he also gives up some power, so you can play guys from the left side, especially. He gives up some hard hits, like Happ and Rizzo, and even Hayward as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, those are basically the top bats to go to in that Cubbies lineup for sure. So I think we can get to them. Getting to let's see, we've got Happ, Contreras. Yeah, it looks like basically the standard Cubs lineup there. So all right, cool. We can move on from that one, I think. Covered that pretty well. Going to the next game, Toronto Blue Jays, 5.04 implied total at the Texas Rangers, 4.56. I have not gotten the Rangers right at all this season, so I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. We've got a 9.5 implied run total in the, or 9.5 run total on the board from Vegas in this one. Tanner Roark taking on Dane Dunning. Dunning, kind of a standout rookie last year, 34 innings pitched, 24.6% strikeout rate, 4.16 xFIP. I think we know what we're getting in Tanner Roark coming off the top as a righty. 18% strikeout rate last year, 10.5% walk rate. You guys like either of these pitchers? Max, why don't you take it? Sorry.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I kind of like Dunning, even against this Blue Jays lineup that's projected to score a bunch of runs. The only problem is he only pitched like 8 spring training innings and never went more than 3. So I don't think he's super stretched out. But he was really good versus righties, and that's pretty much all of their power bats except for like Tellez and Biggio. Yeah, I think you can definitely play Tellez as a one-off, Biggio as a one-off as well if you're not playing a Blue Jay stack, or if you're playing the Blue Jay stack just expecting Dunning to pitch like 3 innings. I think that makes sense as well. No Roark for me. He's been awful for a couple of years now. Gave up a ton of runs in spring training as well. So I don't see it really changing anytime soon. The Rangers do strike out a bunch. They struck out 26% last year. So there's power there. I think you can definitely avoid a guy like Roark and just go to the other guys that are cheaper, like that we talked about, especially in the last game, like Freddie and Alzol.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And I wouldn't really be approaching either pitcher. I agree. I think Dunning's just going to be limited. I think we probably like him better later in the year when he's stretched out a little bit more. I think there's some good value there. I do like the price on him. Getting him at 7,400 makes some things work on FanDuel. 7,200 on DK is reasonable. But yeah, I think this spot, short outing for him. It leads me more to the Toronto side of things in terms of bats. And then the guy that stands out for me on the Texas side of things is Joey Gallo with that big lefty bat in the middle of that lineup. I think throwing him up against Tanner Roark potentially as a one-off for 4,100 on FanDuel, 4,200 on DK, I think makes some sense, but he's getting a ton of ownership. So he was my home run pick for the day, but it looks like the field's definitely going to be there. Alex, are you getting to any Texas Rangers stacks against what I think we all agree is the weaker of these two pitchers?
Definitely. They definitely look like a great option, but the ownership is insane on Texas today. I do like the narrative where they're playing in front of the full stadium, maybe get a little bit more fan encouragement. But I mean, we know Texas is a very rebuilding team. Uh, they have Gallo, who has really good power, and Lau, but as a whole, they have about 5% less extra bases than your average lineup. So I'm not seeing a ton of reason to go here other than the prices and the stadium, Texas being kind of like Coors Light, I guess. So I think the ownership is going to be way too high on Texas guys tonight.
Yeah, that's the one thing scaring me off of this spot. It's not a lineup I love, but I think in this specific matchup with a bunch of lefties up top, it would have been a good one to go to, but there's just so much public ownership there that it kind of not scaring me off the play, but I think I want to get under the play, at least on stacking these guys up. What are you seeing on the Toronto side of things in terms of bats going up against Dunning, Alex? Is that a spot you want to be? I'm getting them projected out pretty well in terms of raw projection, but I'm not getting the biggest home run marks. And Max mentioned we've got a lot of righties in this lineup, and Dunning has done pretty well against them. If they get into that weak Texas pen, though, I think there's some opportunity for some pop here. Are they going to be a stack that you're getting to?
I think so. Yeah, I think Toronto looks really solid today. They have the highest top stack percentage of any team, even including Coors. So that's always a good sign. The ownership does look quite high on Toronto today as well, which is to be expected since they're in a good spot. And what I'm seeing in Toronto is they just have like a top-notch lineup now where every single batter is at least a average power. The top 8 all are above average. So they just have a really stacked lineup. And I mean, you're going up against a pitcher that is a nice young talent, but I don't think he's going to be an ace yet.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The one thing that really jumped off the board for me when I just looked at Toronto here is just their pricing, particularly on FanDuel. Everybody under 3,300 for this lineup in this park is, I think, a myth price. So I think that's probably driving a lot of the FanDuel ownership, at least. But they are, pretty popular on DK as well. So I think this is just a really good spot for a good lineup that we like to roster. Max, before we move on, any final thoughts? Blue Jays side of things with the bats or any other spot in this game?
I love Tellez, especially at 3.2K. Kind of a good leverage spot over Vogelbach, who's 2.8K. But I feel like the power is there, so I think he can definitely outscore a chalkier play in Vogelbach.
I like that. That's a good call. I like that. 21 home runs in 2019 and 409 plate appearances. Hit 8 in just 127 opportunities last year. Solid triple slash 283, 346, 540 with a 257 ISO last year in those limited sample. Love the play. All right, moving on. Guys, before we move on to the next set of games, we've got a lot going on at the site. You heard us talking about some of the different promos we've got with baseball. That's the starting 9 with the number 9 promo there. You can like and subscribe this feed right down below you in this video window here. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe so you get all the notifications anytime the shows go live. That's for all our different shows. When you sign up at the site, make sure you join our Slack community. I'm hanging out in there all the time. Alex and Max are in there answering questions all the time. We have regular behind the scenes content that isn't available to the public at large. So jump in, talk shop in Slack with us. We've got a DFS 101 channel for basics and things like that. We've also got the Masters coming up this weekend. And if you guys don't know it, we've got a ton of PGA content on the site, and the guys kill it with the PGA content. So we've got a little promo going on for that one as well. It's a buy one, get one. The Masters starts this Thursday. So the deal is you buy your first month of Awesemo Plus Golf at the regular price. You get a free month if you use the promo code Dustin. So you're getting 60 days of Awesemo Plus Golf for the price of 30, and it's going to cover you for 2 majors. So if you're anything like me, where you're a majors fish, you only jump into PGA Golf DFS when the majors roll around, this is going to help you out. So jump in there this week, get it in with promo code Dustin. You'll get the Masters. You'll also get the PGA Championship in May. Stop guessing, start winning, join Awesemo Plus, sign up with the promo code Dustin for the PGA. Guys, moving on to Coors Field, the one that everybody wants to talk about. I hate Coors slates. I really do. They're just not for me. It throws everything else off. So we've got Arizona coming in with a 5.09 implied total. Rockies with a 5.51 at home, 10.5 runs on the board from Vegas. We get Luke Weaver, who I think is a talented but struggling, maybe, young pitcher, against Herman Marquez, who is a talented pitcher. And I think maybe priced down for the stadium he's going to be pitching at home today. What do we like on the pitching side of things, Max? You getting either of these guys despite the Coors Field?
So Weaver is definitely somebody I want to target from the bat side. I know the weather's supposed to be bad at Coors. The wind's blowing in, it's cold. I think there's like rain and snow in the forecast, but it doesn't really matter, right? The air is still thin. So the balls are still going to fly out. So Weaver gave up 14 runs in spring training in like 16 innings, which is concerning, especially after a bad year last year. I love the Rocky stack here. And I feel like maybe they will come in under-owned just because people are worried about the weather. So maybe get a little bit of leverage there that you normally would not get on a Coors slate. As far as Marquez goes, great stuff, right? Like always just a strikeout guy that we think of. Obviously better on the road than at home. But in this first start against the Dodgers, who do swing and miss a little bit, only 5% swinging strike rate, which is very low. The velocity looked good, as usual, I guess, but the swinging strike rate was a little bit of a concern for me. So even though he's priced down, I don't think it's somebody that I want to target. Their Arizona team has a little bit of pop this year. Marte's playing a little bit better than he did last year. They have Calhoun, Peralta, Walker, all power bats. So I don't think I'm going to Marquez.
Alex, what about you? Any love for Marquez for only 6,500, or am I alone in that one?
I'm intrigued. Yeah. On FanDuel, it is a lot harder to get to the lower range pitchers. So I don't know if I'm going to have a significant amount of Marquez, but he is a very solid pitcher. And Arizona's lineup today is a little bit below average. Max, like what you're saying about the weather being a little bit chillier, that should compensate a little bit for the altitude. So doesn't look like a horrible spot for Marquez. I'm a little bit more interested on DraftKings at 7K, where at 3% ownership, maybe a little bit of a contrarian play.
And would you be using him as an SP2 there alongside one of the big names, or would you be looking to put him in and then maybe build in another value type pitcher and go all out with your bats in those constructions?
Yeah, it doesn't matter a ton to me one way or the other, because most of the pitchers are around 2 times points per dollar as far as projection. So then it's all about what is the overall lineup construction looking like. If you can find a lineup that you like with 2 7K pitchers, it does sound a little bit hard for me to imagine like being able to make a good lineup like that, but it wouldn't be something I'd avoid.
Okay. All right. If it's a terrible idea, you can tell me it's a terrible idea. So what stood out real quick for me for Marquez through the course of his career, 3.44 xFIP at home, 24.4% strikeout rate. Both of those marks are higher than his marks on the road, which I found interesting. 9.61 K per 9 versus an 8.57 on the road. Gives up more home runs at home, gives up more hits and worse batting average, worse whip. There are definitely dings for him there, but I did find the xFIP and the strikeout rate to be a little bit interesting. So that's kind of what leads me to him. But when we talk Coors Field, we're almost always talking about the bats, you guys. So Alex, either side of this one in terms of bats that you're really excited to get to?
So this one, I mean, the teams in this game, like their lineups really aren't that good. So I definitely am not that excited about either team, aside from the fact that it's Coors. But the 2 batters that really jump out as being really solid bats are Trevor Story and CJ Cron. Both of them have really good power numbers, and then you put them in Coors Field, it should be a really good recipe for success. So I think if I was building a Coors stack, I think going to those 2 guys makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm with you on those 2 bats. Don't mind getting to some Charlie Blackmon in the middle of those 2 guys in the lineup here as a lefty. And then Max, what do you think coming off the top of the Colorado stack with Tapia and Hampson up there? A lot of speed in those 2. Are those guys you're considering building into your Colorado stacks?
Yeah, I'm more of a power guy. So I like Hilliard, actually. Sam Hilliard has all the power in the world. So,
yep.
And I feel like they're playing him a little bit more this year than they did last year. Last year, he kind of sat a lot, even though,
yeah,
I don't know, the Rockies weren't going anywhere. So why not see what the kid has? But yeah, no, I like Hilliard. Crone, I love at 3.7K, just feels way too cheap for all the power the guy has. Story, obviously, and I like Hampson a little bit as well.
I like it. Yeah, and that's actually an interesting call with Hilliard down there batting 7th. If you wanted to go from the middle of the lineup, do like a Story, Blackman, Crone, McMahon, and Hilliard 3 through 7. I don't hate that at all.
Yeah.
Anybody love the Arizona side of this, or are we just moving past them? I know we don't want to cross them off entirely, but they don't really pop for me in terms of home run. They don't really explode for me in terms of projection outside of the fact that they're being bolstered by Coors. So is it just a Coors thing, or is there a good reason to go to these bats other than the fact that they're going to be in Coors?
I think Coors is enough to make it worthwhile to go to them. Pretty much anytime you have a team in Coors, like that's going to make them playable in DFS, and Arizona has a 5.5 team total. That is the third highest or the second highest on the slate. Sorry, third. So anyway, I think even though the talent of these guys isn't that amazing, there should be significant upside here. So the one guy I might leave off my stack is Josh Rojas, who I don't think we have a lineup yet, but he's been leadoff guy. He just doesn't really have much power, and he's not amazing at stolen bases. So I don't know if that is worth the ownership, which we're projecting to be the highest on the team. So if I'm going to this team, that could be one of the ways I get an edge is by fading the most popular batter, who I don't even think is that good.
I like that. And I'll replace him with Pavin Smith in my lineups because I think Pavin Smith not getting quite the respect that maybe his power deserves. A little pop in that bat and very low on play. Moving on, we've got the Dodgers in Oakland to take on the A's. Dodgers coming into town with a 4.52 implied total. A's are the underdogs, 3.57, 8-run total overall with Clayton Kershaw going up against Chris Bassett. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw, future Hall of Famer. Chris Bassett pitching pretty well. Came out last year and kind of broke out a little bit and has carried it over so far into this one. Alex, Max, let me throw this one to you. What do you like better on the pitching side? You going to the Hall of Fame, or you're going to the kind of breakout who's a little underpriced?
I like Kershaw, actually. I know his first starting at Coors wasn't great, only 7% swinging strike rate, but he's a curveball guy for the strikeouts, and the curveball doesn't really do much at Coors. So I'm kind of throwing it out. His velocity looked good. Like, he pretty much looked like he was the same pitcher as last year. Last year, his strikeout numbers were way up. And the A's have looked really, really just awful to start the year. I think they're 0-5 and got dominated by May yesterday. So I definitely like Kershaw. Bassett is cheap, right? 6.9K.
Yeah.
But
both sides.
He was super lucky last year. His ERA was like 2.2 and his xFIP was like 5. So he just ran super good. And the Dodgers are being projected as pretty much an unknown stack today, just kind of like yesterday, just because they're so expensive. And I feel like you get really good leverage going to the Dodgers stack against Bassett, who's perceived to be a better pitcher than he actually is.
Yeah, if you're a fan of the old Uncle Charlie curveball, this is definitely a game for you between Kershaw and Bassett.
Yeah,
but yeah, I agree with you on the taking the Kershaw side of things. And I just don't want to tangle with this Dodgers lineup on most nights. Coors Field or no, they're just one of the best lineups in baseball, top to bottom. Alex, you get into any Bassett for the super cheap price, or should we just jump into these bats?
It doesn't look crazy because you guys are. He was pretty lucky last year, but the xFIP, the 4.4, I guess that's average. The strikeouts 21%, about average. So I guess it would be a little bit crazy to go to Bassett, but I wouldn't completely rule it out.
What about some under-owned Oakland A's bats going up against Clayton Kershaw? Or should I say, are they properly owned or are they under-owned going up in the spot against Clay Kershaw?
For some reason, they just price all the batters in this game up, like on both sides. So I'm looking at our ownership projections, and every single A's batter is at 0.1% ownership. That might be a little bit low, but like I can understand it because Kershaw, he did kind of regain his form last year, had a really solid year, and there's not really any reason why you'd go to Oakland. They got a talented team, but there's a lot of great batting conditions on this slate. Oakland, of course, the Bay Area is never that great for weather. They're about 58 degrees today, so that seems a little bit cool even for them. So I might lay off this game.
Yeah, and a lot of their thumpers are on the left side of the plate too, with Matt Olson, Mitch Moreland in there. They do have some decent right-handed bats with Kana, who I would go to maybe, or Chapman if I was going to this team. But for me, it's basically a pass. On the Dodgers side of things, top to bottom to me, this lineup looks pretty good. I don't mind getting to basically all of it. If Austin Barnes is in there, maybe I leave him out at the bottom of the lineup as a catcher. But that said, he's got a little bit of ability. But I mean, 1 through 8 at least are pretty top notch. Is there anybody you're not willing to get to as part of a Dodgers stack in here? Anybody you're looking to leave out, or do you just fire with both barrels?
So this one, it's hard to say fire with both barrels because like every player on the Dodgers is looking like a bad value. But that is one of those situations where sometimes you can pay up to be contrarian. So there is a huge gap between the top stack percentage of the Dodgers, who have a 5-team total, low for them, but high for any other team. They have about an 8% chance of scoring the most runs tonight. So if they do, obviously there's a pretty solid chance you're going to need them, and no one's going to them because they're so expensive. So I could see it as a contrarian move.
Makes sense. Max, what's your favorite Dodgers bat before we move on out of all of them?
Seager.
I love it. Moving on. We've got the San Francisco Giants. We got to hurry through these last 2 games, but I think we can make it. Got the San Francisco Giants in San Diego to take on the excellent Padres. Giants coming in with Aaron Sanchez on the hill going up against Yu Darvish, one of the top pitchers on the slate. Max, how much Yu Darvish is going to be in your life tonight?
I like the other guys that are priced a little bit less than him more, like Giolito, Glasnow, and even Kershaw. So not much Yu Darvish for me. Even though it's a great spot, San Francisco has a low implied total. Obviously, Darvish is very good. Again, I looked at his swinging strike rate, only 1 game from his last start. Wasn't where we expect Yu Darvish to be. But the velocity was down only like 1 mile an hour, which you really expect from the guys that are just getting stretched out. So not really a bad spot for him. Just the fact that he's 10K going versus guys like Giolito that are 9.3 and Glasnow 9.2 and Kershaw 9.5. Just feel like it will also make him lower owned though. Just FYI. So he will be more contrarian than the other guys.
Alex, what about you in terms of those top 4 or 5 names in terms of pitchers between Giolito, Darvish, Glasnow, and Kershaw, let's say? How would you rank those 4? Or is it just straight line in terms of what the free top pitchers tool says?
I think Darvish is a lower priority than some of the others. It looks like Giolito, I would say, is the best spot of the night. We'll get to him in a second.
Yep.
Kershaw, I think the A's lineup is solid enough that I'm not that excited about Kershaw. Darvish, I think he might be a little bit overowned today, and the reason why, the money line on this game is -175 for San Diego. That's the highest on the slate, and people tend to like to go to those pitchers that have the highest win odds. But the problem is this isn't a great matchup for strikeouts. I have it as about 10% worse than average. So even though San Francisco has a 3.7 team total, I'm thinking that it might not be as high as strikeout spots. So that might make me lean towards maybe Giolito or some of the other guys you mentioned.
Interesting. I like it. Yeah, a couple of very low strikeout rate guys in that Giants lineup, starting off top with Tommy La Stella, projected for the year for a 10% strikeout rate. That's just excellent. I mean, and they've got a few guys in the mid-teens too to help bring that down. And their worst guys don't strike out a ton, except for Mike Yastrzemski and maybe Austin Slater. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of what Darvish could potentially put up. Does that mean we're going to the Giants? Maybe throw some Giants bats at a highly owned Darvish, or are you guys just kind of staying off that spot as well?
So
go ahead, Alex.
Sorry.
No worries.
I think usually going to the leverage bats is only a good play if I mean they have a pretty good prospect for that night, because Yu Darvish, he's only 40% owned. So if San Francisco has a big day, you're not eliminating the whole field, just 40%. So that does tend to be more of a night game or night slate strategy for me, where on the night slate, I'm sure Darvish will be like super high, as well as Giolito. So that could be a good spot to get leverage. But on a main slate with 8 games, let's say it's a small factor, but not one that's really going to drive my decisions.
Makes sense. And then everybody loves this Padres lineup this year, coming into the year, DFS wise, real baseball wise. Max, what are you getting to in the Padres side of things? Throwing them up against, I think, what we probably all agree is a pretty weak pitcher in Aaron Sanchez.
Yeah, Sanchez is not stretched out though, so you're not going to get too much of him anyway. I think 3 innings was the most he pitched in spring training, so he's not somebody that is going to be around for long. Tatis Jr. got hurt last night, so he's not going to be in this lineup. But still, I mean, they have a lot of power and speed combo. It's like one of the teams that actually tries to steal bases, which you don't really see in the majors anymore. So you get the upside there with the power and the speed. Yeah, I mean, Cronenworth just looks so cheap at 3.6K, batting second against Sanchez, guy that struggled against the platoon guys from the left side. So yeah, that would be the guy that I would mainly target. But yeah, not a stack that I'm getting to a lot.
Okay. Guy in there that I'll throw out before we move on to the next game, just because he's a KBO superstar, Ha-Seong Kim, second base and shortstop eligible. He got some pop, got some speed, and was a little buzzy in season long coming in this year, so people might be on him. But we got to fly through this last game, guys. Hit the like and subscribe. Top pitchers are free. Starting 9 promo code, Dustin promo code. Catch the other shows, basketball coming up right after this, but we're going to fly through White Sox, 4.06 implied total at the Seattle Mariners. We've got Luke Giolito, who we've touched on a few times, I think in the best spot of the night, probably the best pitcher of the night, 33.7% strikeout rate, going up against this Mariners lineup that has a lot of guys in the mid-20s in terms of their strikeout rate. James Paxton, lefty on the other side, going up against this White Sox lineup. Not really a spot for me. Paxton down a bit from who he used to be. Priced up a little high, I think, in the mid-8s on both sites. Max, you getting either one of these pitchers?
Yeah, I love Giolito. Probably the best play of the night, like you said. Looked elite again, what we expect in his first start. Yeah, I mean, no reason not to play him other than if you want to fade the ownership. But, I mean, 50%. It's not like a guy like DeGrom yesterday where he was like 90% owned in the 3 max stuff. So, yeah, I don't see any reason not to play Giolito.
Yeah,
and Paxton
with a bunch of 4 and 5 starters.
Yeah. As far as Paxton goes, I don't think he's going to go deep, right? Like this is a guy with tons of injuries in his career. Kind of a Mariners just took a shot on him just to see if he can regain the form that he had when he was there.
Yeah, bring him back.
Yeah. So and White Sox have power up and down the lineup, especially against southpaws. So not a spot that.
Alex, you throwing White Sox bats at this at Paxton and the Mariners bullpen before we get out of here?
I'm kind of feeling some Paxton, and I mean the strikeout numbers have been really, really good. Even like I guess last year he only pitched 5 games, but 29%, which was the same as the previous year where he pitched 29 games. So I have no reason to believe that his strikeouts are going to be a problem, and that's going to be the main factor in fantasy baseball. So the strikeout potential versus the White Sox isn't the greatest because they do strike out a little bit less than average, especially if Madrigal is in the lineup, who strikes out a very low amount. So I think Paxton, he's going to be a high upside guy. He's a little bit cheap, and I'm not that worried that his xFIP last year was 4.4 because, I mean, I'm just hoping on a night where he gets a lot of strikeouts, that's going to limit the production a little bit.
So does the innings limit or not limit officially, but do the innings concern you at all with Paxton? He did in 2019, he pitched 29 games, but he only threw 150 innings.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a guy that necessarily is going to go super deep, but it looks like he He had 8 strikeouts in one of his spring training starts. He faced 16 batters. So I'm guessing that could be like a 5-inning on average kind of run, which is it's enough to get there, I think, if he can rack up the case.
Nice. Like it. Anything on the Mariners side of things is contrarian stack to throw against Giolito in 1 or 2 lineups out of 150, or are we just passing on that?
I think probably not. The park in Seattle is a negative, and then you have a team that's not particularly talented, so I don't see any real reason to go to the Mariners.
Same here. Nobody popping on my home run model or anything. Guys, we made it top to bottom. I think we ran over a minute or two, so apologies to everybody coming up on the basketball shows after us. But everybody tune in for those if you're playing basketball tonight. We've got Live Before Lock, the deeper dive coming up, and plenty of great content today, tomorrow, and the next day, and going on and on. So we really appreciate it, guys. Hit the like and subscribe. We're out of here.